I'm a very private person, and I think part of it is the fact that I was abused as a child, and you learn to keep everything close, and you don't let anybody get really close to you.
Life and death are in the power of the tongue. When we speak, we recognize in adversity that our words determine our fate. When we speak, life and death are in the power of the tongue. When we speak.
Now I'm joined with Tom Scales. He is the Executive Director of Voice Today, as well as the author of Terrible Things Happen to Me. Thank you, Tom, for joining me today.
Jermaine, thank you so much for having me here today.
Now, you are definitely special to me because, like with speaking with Angela, we always tend to think women,
Yes.
And so now I have also a male who's experienced some situations in his life. What has been the hardest? What was the hardest for you as far as writing your book?
Actually, I'm not sure I wrote the book, to be honest with you. Angela and my wife of 40 years were constantly telling me to write the book. And I just didn't want to do it. I woke up one morning about 4 o'clock, walked over to my computer, started typing, and it just all came out. Probably took me less than 3 months from the first day till the time it had gone through edits. And it's not a long book, but it's not intended to be a long book. I think that it hits at the very heart of the issue. The hardest thing for me really was that I'm a very private person, and I think part of it is the fact that I was abused as a child, and you learn to keep everything close, and you don't let anybody get really close to you. And so being as vulnerable and being as candid about the things that actually happened to me, that was not easy. That was not easy.
Did it ever affect your marriage relationship, or had you already
The
spoken
abuse?
about it? Right.
Oh no, just every day.
Every day. Every day. Wow.
Yeah. No, I didn't really understand what happened to me until I was in my early 50s. I'm 68 years old. And for years, and I mean almost every single night, I had these horrific nightmares. And I mean, I couldn't sleep. Even in the heat of summer, I couldn't sleep without heavy covers on top of me. And it was just a protective mechanism. And my communication skills were terrible because I didn't know how to talk to people. I had no sense of negotiating problems or difficulties because I was always on the losing end of that. And so my instant reaction to most things was, I apologize, I accept all the responsibility, I must have been a problem, and then we go on, but nothing ever really gets solved.
So what turned you around? Like you said that it was much later before you realized what had happened to you. What opened your eyes so much later?
I was sitting on the bed in our bedroom in Boulder, Colorado, with my wife and daughter. We were watching the evening news. And on the news came an interview with a man by the name of Frank Fitzpatrick. God bless Frank. And Frank started talking about Father James Porter, who was a priest who molested him and many, many, many other kids in the Boston area. And I stopped and I listened to what he was saying. I turned to my wife and I said, I understand exactly now what happened to me.
Wow.
The whole thing, it was just like a light went on. And from that moment on, I've been to a lot of different therapists and counselors, and they've all helped me some, but none of them have really helped me heal.
Wow. It's funny, as I'm sitting here looking at you, I'm sorry, I just don't get teary-eyed, but as I'm sitting here looking at you, and it was amazing because as I was talking to Angela too, you always hear people say, that people's eyes are, gateway to their soul and stuff like that, and I had never really experienced it until now. As I'm talking to you all, it's like it's almost like I see straight through you. When you're talking about it, I see the passion in your eyes about it, and now I even see even more why it's so important. It's like I feel like, well, I'm a music guy, And I feel like maybe that's what people see when they hear me talking about music. Hopefully they do, you know?
Absolutely.
Because I'm like,
Absolutely.
man, I can really see it. You know, I can see the hurt, I can see the pain, I can also see the healing, you know. And even though sometimes it takes longer and you may heal in stages, but you know, I can see that it's like, that is a part of healing just because I can even say anything about it,
Right.
you know, shows that I'm healing.
There was a time when there was no possibility that I would be sitting here having a discussion with you. Frankly, I wouldn't even be sitting here at Voice. God really has done a miracle in my life. And it all started. And this is the reason that our outreach to churches is so important. And I'm a member of Johnson Ferry Baptist Church. I walked into church one Sunday, and I looked at the bulletin, and the words just jumped right off the page at me. Support group for adult survivors of child sexual abuse. I thought, holy cow, I'm not the only one. And I carried it around for maybe 6 weeks before I got the courage to come. And I came that night, and I'm sitting in the parking lot before I go in, and I'm saying to myself, you know, it's going to be all women, and I'm going to be mortified. Okay? And then I say, gee, there's nothing I could say to a woman that's going to make any sense to her or difference to her. So nothing she's going to be able to help me with. And the last thing I said to myself before I got out of the car is, if I open up my mouth, my life's never going to be the same again. And I had real foreboding. It was not a positive statement. So I walk into the group, and the first thing I realized is it was 4 men and 4 women. Mm-hmm. And Angela introduced herself, and Jack Morgan, who's the other moderator for the group, introduced himself. And we sat down, and slowly but surely the group assembled. And as they assembled, and you know, I started moving my chair out of the circle. If there hadn't been a wall behind me, I would have been in the next room. I mean, it was really incredible. But the process we go through when there's someone new there, which was me, and there are 9 people, including me there, is that everyone tells their story. And so the support group meets from 7 to 8 o'clock. And I'm sitting there, and I'm adding up the minutes, and I'm looking at how much time everybody's taking. I'm saying, I'm home free. They're not going to have time for me. Mm-hmm. And then Angela interrupts, and she says, you know, we're going to take whatever time is necessary. And I can't tell you what I said that night. When I walked out of that room, I weighed 150 pounds less. Wow. It was just a stunning transformation for me. And not long after that, Angela and I had coffee. We shared our experiences and our stories, and we talked it through. She told me about Voice and a lot about Voice. She gave me a copy of her book. Mm-hmm. And she said, when you're done reading my book, give me a call. So I called her the next morning. And I had read the book in less than 24 hours, and it would just, I mean, I told her, I said, it never occurred to me that a woman could write my life story. Wow. Because except for what predators do, it's different what they do to little boys, what they do to little girls, the emotions, the rage, the anger, the isolation, the shame, the guilt, all those things are the same. And we find that now. I mean, I've talked to hundreds of survivors, and it didn't make any difference if it happened one time or 1,000 times. And it doesn't make any difference if it was fondling or penetration or pornography or any of those different things. They distort your boundaries in that moment. And I was sexually abused by 8 different men. And I was held down and raped by a young woman by the time I was 13. And what that does is it destroys your sense of boundaries, because you look at this and you say, I guess that's okay behavior. These are all people that my family knows. They're, I mean, very, very close friends, priests in my parish. Okay? And so those boundaries become the foundation of your life. How horrible is that? Okay? And so as you begin to transition into adulthood, you start realizing that everybody else isn't different, you are. And you go through a lot of different processes to try to figure out what's wrong with you, because you don't really understand. There's a part of this process, and some of the men out there may be experiencing this, that you are abused, and when it's happening, you know exactly what's happening to you. There's some point in time in my life where those events were so horrid that I blocked them all out, and they were gone, literally, except for the destructive behaviors. And I mean, I tell people that I know I was sober one weekend in graduate school. I just can't remember which one it was. I mean, I was just a bona fide drunk. I learned to lie and manipulate with incredible skill because that's what you use to protect yourself. No, not really. It's interesting, Jermaine, because I have a very large extended family. My mother was one of 13, so I have lots of aunts and uncles on her side. What I found out as things came out is that I think everybody in the family knew about it. Not one person tried to help me. I think the topic is so horrible that they can't get their mind around it. And it's easy, society, my parents, it's easy for them to use the words molested and abused because when I say those words, you don't get a picture of anything. So they use these nice sanitary words that don't mean anything. Okay? They don't visualize a little boy of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old being sodomized. Okay? They don't visualize a little boy being forced to perform oral sex or having it done to him. Those are the actual things that happen to a little boy. And most people, I mean, your listeners may not even be able to listen to that, but that's what happens. That's what you're protecting your child from. And that's the reason you do not want to allow your child to be in one-on-one relationships with adults. We haven't learned how to teach our kids to be safe. You only do that by starting very early and talking about their personal boundaries, talk about their private parts, so they understand their bodies and they understand the first time someone crosses that boundary, they know to run and scream until someone listens to them. And we don't teach our kids that. We teach them to stop, drop, and roll if they catch on fire, okay? We teach them to look both ways going across the street. And we don't teach them this really, really important, insidious danger that lurks everywhere. There are 38 million boys under the age of 18 in the United States of America. 1 in 6, based on the CDC in Atlanta statistics, 1 in 6 is going to be sexually molested before they're 18. That's over 6 million little boys. I mean, it's not something that's just for the girls. I mean, the numbers are horrific for women also, no question about that. But the process is kind of emasculating for a guy because the things that you're forced to do are the butt of a lot of jokes, okay? And the more you hear the jokes, the more you back away. And I don't do that anymore. And I would speak to your audience that if you're a man and you've been abused, that you can have a whole different life. My life is so different today than it was just 3 or 4 years ago because I don't carry any guilt, I don't carry any shame, I don't have nightmares anymore, okay? I don't have most of the self-destructive behaviors that I had in my life, I've recognized them and I've set them aside and I've moved on. And I think that is so important. And the men watching your show, the same thing can be for them, okay? I hated almost every day. I hated myself most of the time. Sometimes I hated what I did. But in the honest, there were long times when I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't understand what was wrong with it because it's what I was taught to do. And so there's an opportunity here. And that's what Voice is all about. We are about reaching out to men and women who have had to go through what Angela and I have gone through. We know that you can heal because we healed. We know it's work, but we know the work is well worth it. Right. And we know that you can protect every child. There's no reason for this to happen to any child, anywhere.
For a man or a woman that has a spouse, if, let's say, they've never spoken out about it or anything like that, and they're feeling like that maybe I should tell this to my spouse, how do you recommend that they usually start that conversation? I mean, I can imagine like that's probably the hardest part. Every time you get ready to start that conversation would be hard.
It's really interesting because we actually, and I'm going to answer your question, we actually had a member of our board of directors whose wife joined him. Or he was on the board and he was telling her why he wanted to do this and all. And after 16 years of marriage, she told him that she'd been abused as a child. And they'd never spoken about it. I think that you can prepare your spouse. I think that you can explain to them that some really ugly things happened to you as a child, that you want to share that with them. And then I think you start talking. And I think that it's not, and I'd say this to your audience too, if you're a spouse, it's not going to be an easy thing to hear. Okay? It's going to really hurt because it's going to change your view of that person. But I think what you have to keep in mind as the spouse is that I mean, I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years old. Angela was 3, 4, 5 years old. This stuff was going on, and we had no control whatsoever. And frankly, I had such fear of my father. All they had to do was threaten to tell my father something, and I would have done anything they said. Okay? And so the spouse needs to be compassionate and understanding. And I think that's the first step. Maybe counseling is in order for both of them so they understand. We've got a terrific book that was written by Cecil Murphy, who is a New York Times best-selling author, and it's on our website. It's called When the Man You Love Was Abused. Okay? It's a great book, and it will help a spouse understand. Frankly, read my book or Angela's book, okay? Because that will help the spouse understand what their husband is doing, okay? Because it's the damage that goes on inside sometimes it's really hard to express it in words, and the books can help. The books can help because the books can help you get a view, because both of us are pretty candid about the ways in which it damaged us and the deceitful, evil ways in which these things actually happened, and how people around us responded to it. You gotta love people. You gotta love people, and a lot of times when you divulge it to people, and I think this happened with my friend, she took on the embarrassment and was so embarrassed about it that she literally couldn't hold on to the book, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if some of the spouses feel that way. Frankly, if they want to talk to somebody else first, they can call us. And we can help them find, good Christian counselors who are knowledgeable in this area, and maybe that's the path they go first, and work into it with their spouse. Okay, it all depends on what the relationship is like. Churches have a lot of support groups: divorce, alcohol, drugs, eating disorders, depression, all this stuff.
Right.
Okay. Not all those people, but a huge number of those people, the genesis of their problem is in child sexual abuse. And, well, think about it. 80 to 90% of prostitutes were sexually abused as children. We work with a Latino clinic in the Atlanta area, and he's told us that 100% of the young women, Latino young women, they get off the street who are in prostitution, 100%, no exceptions, were sexually abused as children. The young people that get off the street who are into drugs, he said, no exceptions. 100%, I mean, the numbers would just knock your socks off. 100% were sexually abused as children. So these are the things, whether it's prostitution, promiscuity, alcohol, drugs, what you're doing is trying to numb your body. You're trying to make it all go away. And when you're being abused, at least for me, I took my mind, I put it somewhere else. And so when a young boy or a young girl is in prostitution, they're not really there. Their mind is off somewhere else. And so in some respects, it's an escape mechanism until the point where it's enforced. And then it becomes sexual slavery and under the control of a pimp. And that just raises it to a totally different level.
If you could go back now, where you are now, and from who you are now, and go back to that young boy who was experiencing the things that he was experiencing, what would you say to him?
It's not your fault. I believe you. God's got a whole different plan for you. You just got to have courage.
Amen. But you know, I know deep down in my heart that you all are definitely doing what you should be doing. You know, and I know you're going to reach so many people because every time I keep looking at you because I'm like, I can see it all in their eyes. Like, it's such a strong passion, you know, for helping other kids that's been there and helping adults. And I'm telling you, if the world was more like you and Angela, we'd be in a better place. We wouldn't need you.
I tell you, there is no greater thrill in my life than being able to sit down and talk to someone who's 25, 30, 35, 40 facing this issue right now because I'm saying they're not going to wait till their 50s to do it. I mean, think of how I've spent 4 decades in an emotional cave, hiding from myself and from everyone around me. So I don't want to do that. I want to help other people be free of it.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
And God is going to bless you for that.
Amen.